Hi, I'm Ginny Rosencrantz with the University of Maryland Extension, and it is October. Love, love, love October. Beautiful, clear skies, blue skies, hardly any humidity, cold in the morning. Yes, you might need a coat, but gorgeous in the afternoon. So we are here at Salisbury University in this gorgeous garden right here. We're going to talk about taking care of things that you can do in the fall. Like now is the perfect time to handle the weeds in your lawn and maybe overseed your lawn so you have a thicker, richer, thicker lawn that's going to shade out a lot of those weeds. Now this lawn is really nice. There's hardly any weeds here. We'll have to search for a couple weeds, but we'll show you a couple. Now this is also the time of year to think spring. Yes, think spring. It's fall, let's think spring. That's because it's the perfect time of the year to plant your daffodils, your tulips, your crocuses, your hyacinths, all those beautiful spring blooming bulbs that just give us such pleasure right at the end of winter and into the beginning and promise of spring. So join me for Delmarva Gardens coming up next right here on Pack 14. So this year, I don't know exactly all the reasons, but grass seed is very difficult to find. So on the mid-Atlantic area where we live, Delmarva especially, the grass seed that you're going to want to get will still be, if you cannot find a turf type tall fescue, you want to get one of the newer improved varieties of just tall fescue. And tall fescue, you know, it's very, very close to the turf type tall fescue. Maybe it's just a little coarser. It's probably not a good idea to use just K31 tall fescue. That is a very coarse orchard grass, and it's not going to give you the lawn that you want, but the turf fescue or the tall fescue should be okay. The other thing is you want to take a look to see what it has in it. So let's go ahead and look at the bag and so you can see what's going on. So this one, it doesn't matter who owns it, but this is basically, rapid grass, which is good. It's a tall fescue mix. You want to try to get a mix because if you just have one variety like Kentucky 31, which you do not want, and you have a problem, then you've lost the whole lawn. But a mixture of grass seeds is good because you'll have some of this variety, some of this variety, some of that variety. You'll have 2 or 3 different varieties. If one happens to be too weak or comes down with a fungus or something like that, then you have the other 2 there to kind of, you know, help out. So let me turn it over and show you some other things you want to take a look at. So when you're redoing your lawn, you have 2 options. You could go ahead and kill your entire lawn and do what they call a new lawn. That's really, really hard to do. But if you're going to do it, fall is the best time. October is absolutely perfect. I'm thinking that most people who have a fairly decent lawn, you want to do what they call overseed. And this is really important. So we've done this before, but let's go over it now. So the first thing you have to do, and I love the fact that they even list the steps. So if you forget what I'm saying, if you get a bag that has the directions, it's really easy. So the first thing you want to do is you want to cut the grass real, real low. Why do you want to do that? Well, you want to get rid of any of the seeds that are on the grass seed or any of the weed seeds that are on any of the weeds. The other thing is you can go ahead and see where some of the perennial weeds are. And if they are like a wiregrass, that is really difficult to control because it's hard to control a grass in a grass. But if you're just going to go ahead and overseed and live with it for a while, that's good too because the healthier your full sun lawn is during the winter, spring, and summer, the more it will actually shade out the wiregrass. Not 100%. There is no 100%. When you have wiregrass, you have wiregrass. But you can go ahead and work with it so that your lawn can overtake it. So that's the first thing you want to do. And then they actually say that you want to use a spreader. And that's really important to be able to know how much grass seed you should add and what setting you should have the spreader. So every spreader is different, but a lot of places when you buy a certain brand, they have a certain brand of spreader, and that does make it easier. What I would suggest, and it always works well for people, when you think about it, you want to take half the amount of seed and go north and south with it, and then you want to do the other half the amount of seed going east and west. So you're actually crossing over, and that way you don't have like strips, like did you really get close enough to where you were before? Sometimes it's really hard to see where you were spreading grass. So do half of it going north and south, the other half east and west. You're saying half of it. How do you determine? Well, you want to know how much grass seed you need for overseeding. and then go ahead and measure how many pounds you're going to need for 1,000 square feet. That's where you go into math. If you have less than 1,000, you can go ahead and subtract it. If you have more than 1,000, you can go ahead and multiply it. It's not all that bad. It's pretty easy math. So the other thing you want to do once you do that, and I love it right here, they talk about watering. An annual grass, like for instance crabgrass, you just need the soil temperature to be in the 50s and that much sunshine, just a snap of sunshine, and that grass seed goes, oh, it's time to grow. And it grows like crazy because annuals have only one life to live. So they quickly germinate, they quickly put some roots in the ground, and they quickly put out the leaves, the foliage. And remember, crabgrass doesn't go straight up like a lawn grass does. It grows sideways, hence the term crabgrass, because it looks like a crab. And it does a great job of doing that because it only has that one life. So it throws out the roots, it throws out the foliage, it throws up the seeds, and it knows it's done. A perennial grass, on the other hand, the first year, it spends a lot of time and effort getting a really deep root system. So if you can keep the soil evenly moist for that seed to germinate, it will have a better chance of germinating. Once it dries out without germinating, it's dead. Once it started that germination process, you need to keep it evenly moist. So when you water it, you need to water it like 3 times a day to keep that soil evenly moist. That's another reason why it's so good to do it in October, because we have cooler temperatures. And sometimes we have a little bit of rain and that kind of stuff, and it just all works to your advantage to do your overseeding. So, okay, so you go ahead and keep it evenly moist for the 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, you can go ahead and see what the grass seed looks like. So they even have pictures. Here is after basically 11 days, which is maybe about a week and a half, and then 21 days. You can actually see, wow, here there's a little bit of grass coming up. Here you can see after 21 days, you can actually see what you want to have. That's really important. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what they have in this actual bag. So let's go ahead and take a look. So here, let's see now. It talks about what type of seed that they have. They have Duration Tall Fescue. They had Endeavor Tall Fescue. They have Blacktail Tall Fescue. And that they have Trinity Tall Fescue. So that's all those different tall fescues. And that's going to make a huge difference. If there's one that is not happy, then all the others will do really, really well. That's what you want. The other thing you want to check on is how much weed seed and other critters are in here. So let's go further down. Okay, let's see. They have 24.5% of inert matter, and then they have 0.25 other crop seeds and 0.01% weed seeds. That is so important. The less weeds you add to your lawn, the less weeds you're going to have to control. Perfect. So you already have some weeds, but you might have been working on them. You might actually have very few weeds, which would be really good. And if you wanted to go ahead and control any of the broadleaf weeds, you want to do that before you go ahead and put out the grass seed, because it needs about 2 weeks before you can go ahead and do that. So that would be a thing to do like right now, and then sometime later, like 2 weeks later, go ahead and put your grass seed down. And then you'll still have the full part of October for that grass seed to get deeply rooted into the ground, and then have good foliage on top. You don't want to add any kind of weed control until you've cut the grass 4 times. So that means you've got to have the grass to grow really, really well. And you also want to have the grass growing really well before you have to start raking leaves off of it if you have trees. That's important to know. Okay, but that being said, they also have something called a turf builder with weed and feed. So if you're not going ahead and add new lawn, a lot of times you can go ahead and just use something like this. And again, the name of the company doesn't matter. This one is what they call Turf Builder, which is a winter guard, fall weed, and feed. So that means that there is a fertilizer component as well as a herbicide component. When you look at the weeds that it controls, mostly dandelions, but this means it controls all the broadweeds. So there's 2 different types of herbicides. You can have a herbicide that kills grasses and only grasses. You don't want to do that with your lawn, right? No, you're keeping your lawn. So the only thing you can do at that point is pull out the grassy weeds, If you have sedge, you need to use a sedge herbicide, but most of the people get really upset about dandelions and clovers. I like clovers, I like my violets, but I understand there's a lot of people who are not happy with that. So what you'll be using is a 2,4-D product. So it's 2-4, D, and it is a broadleaf weed herbicide. So let's see what they have here. We'll go ahead and take a look. So the first ingredient is 2,4-D, and that's 1.221%. So that's not an awful lot, but it's enough to go ahead and take care of any of the small germinating broadleaf weeds. Nothing really big, but it's good for that. Okay. It has a couple other things, but it also has fertilizer. So we need to see how much fertilizer it has. If you go over here, it says, here's the net weight and how many pounds you have. And then down here, it's got the number of 28-0-6. So when you're talking fertilizer, you're talking about the 3 major fertilizer components that a plant needs. Plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They need that in pounds per acre. All the other ingredients that the plants need, things like sulfur, calcium, magnesium, they don't need those in pounds per acre usually. It's a lot smaller. And then all the micronutrients, well, they're micronutrients. You could probably add like a teaspoon or a tablespoon per acre. So that's kind of difficult to throw together. So usually that's kind of a mixture that they put together for you. But when it comes to fertilizer, the 3 main ingredients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, those are the 3 big ones. And those are the ones that we have to make sure that our lawn has so that it can be a healthy lawn. I have people who say to me, I never fertilize my lawn. And they're like, whatever. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. The healthier the lawn, the better the root system. The better the root system, the healthier the lawn. So it's a give and take thing. If you don't feed your lawn, you're not feeding the roots. The roots are the ones that get all the nutrients up from the ground. And so that's where they're getting the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. When you put it on the ground, your roots will pull it up. You want the roots to be deep into the ground though, so that they can pull it up with the water too, and be away from the top 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of soil, where in the summer, the 90-degree temperatures bakes that soil. You want your roots to be down below that inch of ground. Again, that's why you want to water really good. The one thing I want to also mention about the fertilizer is Maryland has a Fertilizer Lawn Law, which says that you can only add nitrogen and to the certain amount that is allowed by the state of Maryland and also by your soil test. So you have to keep in mind what exactly is going on. And all of that stuff is available through Extension. So you can check Extension, soil testing, and you will get the University of Maryland soil testing. The other thing is phosphorus is very, very good for growing roots, but it doesn't move in the soil and it filters through the soil very, very slowly. If you put too much phosphorus on top, it can wash off the soil and into the storm drains, which goes into the rivers, which goes into the Chesapeake Bay or our coastal bays, and cause problems. So when you're looking at fall fertilization, if your soil test results show that you have adequate phosphorus, then you don't need to add any phosphorus. And that's why this fertilizer bag has no phosphorus. It has nitrogen and potassium, so that'll be really good, but no phosphorus. So you are ready now to go ahead and do your lawn. Let's go out and take a look at the lawn and see what kind of weeds we can find to see if we can go ahead and control them with something like this. This is a beautiful green lawn, right? It looks green to you, looks green to me. But they do have a few weeds. So with a weed and feed, let's see what it will take care of. Well, first of all, I have some wiregrass. The Eastern Shore is full of wiregrass. This is a survivor. Wiregrass has very strong roots. You can see the roots right there. And everywhere is a leaf, their roots can grow. So, for instance, if I'm holding it like this, and if this was growing in the ground where these leaves are, there would be some roots out here. The reason why you don't see roots is this was trying to grow on cement. It was like, oh no, we're going in the wrong direction. But it turned around in the other direction where you had the really, really good root system. Look at that nice root system. That is the good start of a root system. So this is very drought tolerant, very heat tolerant. This is also salt tolerant. So if you live near either one of the rivers or the bay or the ocean, and you have a high tide and it covers over your entire lawn, this is going to survive. Okay, what else do we have? Oh yes, we have some crabgrass. And crabgrass is a summer annual. There we go. I had it mixed up with some of the wiregrass. So the leaves are very broad, which is good for crabgrass because it needs those broad leaves to get as much sunlight to go ahead and grow like crazy. Here are the seed heads, so it's growing and it's ready to throw out seeds. What you could do is, if you keep the grass cut before those seed heads ripen, you can go ahead and eliminate them. And it does have a fairly good root system, but apparently I didn't pull up the root system. But anyways, that's crabgrass. And okay, there's crabgrass again with a little bit of root system on that. A little bit. Okay, good. So then we have, oh, look at this. This looks like clover, but it really has a little bright yellow flower. So this is Oxalis. This is becoming a problem in lots of landscape beds because it becomes, it's easily germinated in containers. And when people have it in containers, then they bring it home and it comes in with all your trees and shrubs and herbaceous perennials, and it sometimes goes into the lawn. So this would be controlled by the 2,4-D weed and feed. Okay, this is dandelion. This is very typical where you have a very strong root system. This is it's kind of almost like a carrot-like root system, so it goes deep into the soil and then it has fine roots off to the side. If you look at how the foliage spreads, it spreads out really, really wide, and it goes ahead and collects sunlight from all kinds of angles because of that. And this would be one that could be controlled. Now, this is a small plant, so this would probably be controlled very, very well. A plant that has been living in the lawn for 2 or 3 years might be more difficult. These you can actually go ahead and pull them out. You could use a trowel, you could use an asparagus cutter, all kinds of ways. But you want to make sure to get as much of the root as you can, because whatever is left of that root that's in the ground will continue to grow because it's already fairly well established. Remember, perennials grow a really strong root system first for the first 2 to 3 years before it goes, okay, I'm ready to roll. So we have whatever. Oh, okay. This is a new kind of weed that we have. This is a type of sedge. It's called Kalinga. Sedges have edges, and they have these very, very distinctive seed heads where they have these little side shoots right here, and then the seeds are on top. This says that this lawn has some low spots because it likes to grow where the soil stays really, really damp. And you'll find it a lot on golf courses where they do a lot of irrigation, where things don't dry out. Okay, then we have, oh, here's one that's kind of fun. This is wild strawberry. So if you look at the foliage, that's definitely a strawberry leaf. And it has what they call stolons. It has a root system right here. You can see the root system, it's not too bad. And this is a stolon, which is a modified stem that grows out from the mother plant, and then there was a little bit of roots there when I ripped it out. Sorry about that, I left the roots there. But that's how it spreads. It has a little plant here, puts a stolon, wherever the stolon lands on the lawn, it will go ahead and grow, and then it'll hop, skip, and jump all over the place. So it plays hopscotch all over the place. And this may not be what you want to have. This is usually found in a shady spot, even though it loves the sun. This is an Indian strawberry. It's a native one, and it's not got a tasty strawberry whatsoever, unfortunately. Then I have some violets. These also like shade and moist soil, and they have like little almost heart-shaped leaves. What's interesting about the violets is they're very difficult to control. Their growing tip is actually below the soil. But when they bloom in the springtime, they have these gorgeous little either dark blue or purple or light blue or white flowers. So to me, it's not a problem. The other thing we have is clover, and I'm going to have to find some because I had some and I dropped it. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to find some clover. I know, oh, here we go. So here is some clover, and it's surrounded by some good grass. It's surrounded by a little bit of wiregrass, and we have some Kalinga over here. But here's the clover, little 3-leaf clovers. If you look hard, you might be able to find a 4-leaf clover. My mom was really always good about being able to find 4-leaf clovers. But clover usually has the 3 leaves like this. And it can have little flowers. Some flowers are white, some of them are red, some of them are sort of a purpley color. There's actually a micro clover that people are now planting into the grass. Now, prior to World War II, people used to plant clover in their lawns because clover has a really cool way of dealing with nitrogen. It has a nice broad leaf, so it can pull all the sunshine in. It needs that. It needs that for photosynthesis. But then it also pulls a lot of the nitrogen in and says, I'm going to save some of this nitrogen. That's important because nitrogen is very, very volatile in the sense that if it wants to, it can go from a liquid and flow through the soil profile out of the root zone and into the wherever, or it can actually become a gas and float up into the air and be lost to the plants. So it can be down on the ground, but it can just go up or down. So it's very, very volatile. It doesn't like to stick around. I think it's got a free spirit kind of personality. So what clover does is its roots have learned how to actually grab molecules of nitrogen within a little part of the plant and actually kind of build a little wall around it, like a package, kind of like a food package where it can keep it and then keep it until next spring to go ahead and release it so that clover can use it when it needs it in the springtime. So people used to plant clover in the lawn because the grass seed cannot do that, but it can borrow some of that nitrogen from the clover. And that is kind of like a way that friends work together and plants also work together too. Well, after World War II, we were able to develop a type of chemical nitrogen so we could go ahead and add as much nitrogen as we want when we want it, which made agriculture and lawn growing a totally different ballpark. It's a lot easier to go ahead and add the nitrogen you need for your corn so you get more bushels of corn per acre. Or if you're growing tomatoes at home, you could add the nitrogen for the tomatoes because they're nitrogen hogs. And you get better tomatoes. And with your lawn, if you add the nitrogen to the lawn in the fall, the plants can take it in, they can go ahead and utilize it, they store all their sugars then into starches until the next spring. And I look at roots kind of like the brains of the plant. It goes, okay, now I've got all this, sequestered. In this section I have all the nitrogen, in this section I have all the phosphorus, and here I have all the potassium. And so come springtime, I'm going to send the nitrogen here, here, and here. I'm going to send the potassium here, 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 and the phosphorus here, here, and there. So they kind of, generate where it needs to be, which is pretty cool. But I think I would always leave clover in the lawn so that if you ever have a time where you can't put down the nitrogen in time, you've got clover that's doing it right at the right time. I love this particular bed because it is filled with beautiful perennials and annuals. And the annuals, of course, they only survive one season, so you have to replant them. But you get to redesign your garden every year with annuals, which I love. The only thing that holds you back is your imagination and your pocketbook. Perennials you plant once, and for the most part, many of them will live for years and years and years. And you can go ahead and use them and design around them. But early springtime, that's when you have the beautiful bulbs like the daffodils and the tulips, which I love. But you have to plant them this time of year. So why don't you join me while we go take a look at some daffodil and tulip bulbs and talk about the best way to do it. Come. I know that a lot of people love fall because it's nice and cool. But to me, sometimes fall is like, oh my gosh, the annuals are dying, all the leaves fall off the tree. And I start to think, wow. And then I realize fall is the time to plan for spring, which I love that idea. So this is why I'm talking about bulbs, because you plant the bulbs in the fall and then you know that they're going to come up in the springtime and they're going to give you such joy because even if it's snowing and ice, these daffodils will come up and so will these tulips, and they will bring such joy to the garden because they're so beautiful. So let's start with the daffodils because these guys live forever. Why do they live forever? Well, first of all, you have to know what to plant and how to do it. All of your bulbs need to be planted in an area that has full sun, okay? Full sun, morning sun, afternoon sun. If you have a deciduous tree, that would be a tree that loses its leaves in the fall. You want to plant it, like say, on the outskirts of the tree so that as the tree grows, you'll still have sunshine going underneath the plants and getting to the plant where the leaves are not on it. And then by the time the new leaves emerge, these are already ready to kind of go to sleep. They go dormant in the summertime. So you want to plant them though where you've got excellent drainage. The quickest way to kill a bulb is to plant it where it gets drowned out. And we do have high water tables in our area. So look around, and if you don't have an area, make some raised beds so you can grow them and enjoy them. But these guys are very, very smart. So the bulb itself is poisonous. So nothing eats the bulbs. So if you have voles and moles, they're not going to eat this. Here's the root system, really good root system, and here's where the foliage is going to come up on the top. This is a single bulb. You can get doubles, especially if you buy premium. This is just a regular one, no big deal. But now this is a nice variety. This is called Dutch Master, and it's a stronger, larger bulbs than the original King Alfred's that used to be like the #1 back in the 1950s. So Dutch Master is great. You get gorgeous, strong stems, beautiful, bright gold flowers with the beautiful gold petals and the beautiful gold trumpet. So this is wonderful. So the flowers, the stems, the foliage, and the bulb, all of them are poisonous to anything that eats it. So you're not going to have horses grazing on it, you're not going to have cows grazing on it, and you're not going to have the voles eat them. Now voles are vegetarians, so they're the ones that go after everything. Moles are, with an M, are meat eaters. They don't bother these at all. But they, they're just not going to eat these because they're not, oh my gosh, they get a tummy ache and I'm not doing that again. So this is a different one. So this is Dutch Master, a large daffodil. This is an early daffodil. This is called Early Bride. Early Bride. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So, and it has a different look to it. The petals on the outside are pure white, whereas the trumpet has more of a flare, and you've got the darker outside and then the gold on the inside. Really, really pretty. But now notice how the bulb is much smaller than the Dutch Master. It's a smaller flower. It's a smaller plant. That's why it has a smaller bulb. But you still have the roots on the bottom, and the top on the foliage will be coming out on the top. That's important to know because when you dig and plant these, you want to plant them with the roots pointing down. How deep should you plant them? Well, these guys like to be at least 6 to 7 inches into the ground. And on the back of the bulb, they will often tell you that kind of thing. So it tells you what it is, it tells you how deep to plant it. Let's see, bloom time, bulbs, you could use 50 per square feet, and depth of 6 inches down, because these are smaller ones, so the larger ones need to be planted a little deeper. So that's really good. If you plant them too shallow, what's going to happen is that there's not going to be, first of all, it's not going to be cool enough for these guys, because they do need to be cool in the summertime. We have 90-degree temperatures in our summers, right? And it's going to get warmer, unfortunately. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we plant these deep enough in the soil so that in the heat of the summertime, they're going to stay cool, because they will be dormant. They don't want to have a lot of rain or a lot of water on them. I like to plant them back about maybe a foot and a half from the edge of the garden bed, so I can plant all my annuals that I'm going to water in front of them so that they won't be watered. It's kind of important to remember that. And also, as the annuals grow really, really well, they will shade the dying foliage of the daffodils. Cool idea. Now these are tulips. Now tulips, on the other hand, these are tasty. So these are something that you might want to go ahead and put into maybe a crate. That they have these little plastic and metal crates that you can go ahead and put them in, and then the voles will not be able to eat them. So we have two different types. We have one that looks like it's got beautiful red and white and green on it. This is almost like a Dutch tulip, whereas this one, Angelique, I love Angelique. She has many, many petals, and she's got lots and lots of gorgeous fragrance to her too. The Dutch tulips, just the regular old-fashioned Dutch tulips, they can survive if they have good drainage and morning sun, sometimes afternoon shade. They can survive. I have had some in my gardens that have lived for over 30 years. But every time I plant my Angelique, she lives for a year, and then she goes away. Part of it is she really needs a lot cooler temperatures in the summer that we don't have. If I lived up in New York, oh man, she would be happy there. So I go ahead and plant her every year, because even though she's absolutely gorgeous and she's a tulip, I know that she's only going to be here one spring, and I'm fine with that. Well, I hope you enjoyed our talk about getting your lawn ready, this is the perfect time, but also getting your flower beds ready too, and for the promise of spring, even though it's fall. Thank you for joining me right here on Delmarva Gardens on Pack 14.